Hello there. I did not see you come in. I'd like to welcome you to the half-hour special Adam and Ryan, a look at Mohawk. Over the next 30 minutes, you are going to see 3 very well-done mini-documentaries about life here at Mohawk, especially through the eyes of a journalist. Our first video, however, comes from a great entry of Lucas, Jordan, and Michelle, and they are going to be here to talk to you about the behind-the-scenes look at Ignite News radio station.
Shedding light on today's issues.
This is Ignite News Today
On Indie 101 FM. Good afternoon and welcome to Ignite News Today, the radio news magazine produced by students for students. It is Thursday, December 1st, and I'm your host, Ashley Dirk. Coming up on Ignite News Today, students may soon pay less for their education. Canadian men are going clean-shaven, and Hamilton residents are flocking the food banks. All this and more coming up in the next half hour.
Hi, is this Ann Leonard? Hi, this is Adam Pacheco calling. I'm a journalism student at Mohawk College in Hamilton. How are you today?
I'm going to send this to Alan Hayward.
All right, thank you very much. All right, bye now. That was probably one of the easiest phone calls I've ever made. It's tough making phone calls because it's people you've never talked to before, and they're asking you to go on radio, and half of them don't want to, and they think that everyone in the world's going to hear this, but in reality, it's just 5 people probably listening to our newscast. But that was very easy, and I got to go make a phone call now. She's a sweet lady, but she talked way too much. But now actually it works out good, because if I don't get any more phone calls, then I could just use this as a complete interview and we could just do a talk back and forth. Man, that was 6 minutes and 32 seconds of someone just blabbing on about drunk driving. And that's not even my main contact. She was just the backup contact. Daryl will be happy. Let's see what Daryl has to say about this. Watch this one. So let's hear your advice. I just got off the phone with the driver, the one with the 3 initiatives that they did. She gave me great answers. She actually gave me a lot of stats too. On tape, yeah, I recorded it. I have 6 minutes of interview. Okay. Yeah, because I can get a lot of good answers on it. Sounds good. All right.
Well, Ignite News Today, again, we've always done a radio news magazine and newscast is to prepare students to go out in the industry. Obviously, those jobs, number of jobs are shrinking. But the idea is to work on something, work to a deadline. It's not, hopefully we're doing things that are topical, again, trying to react to things that are happening that particular day. Trying to get students really out and interviewing. It's about interviewing and putting things together. I don't even care if it's a whole story sometimes. But really part of this skill is going out and mining for information, right? Talking to people, getting stories, getting interviews, getting perspectives, and that's what this program is about. We try to tell stories that are from a student perspective, that are interesting to a Mohawk audience, but also to the broader community. But again, that focus is pretty narrow. We're not trying to compete with CHML or CFRB or any of the major players in news talk in this market, right? Everything today is niched. You have to own a niche, so we should almost cover the opening of an envelope at Mohawk. We don't have the personnel to do that, but you have to be able to pick a target and serve it. And that's what we try to do with the magazine, is tell stories that are relevant to students and faculty at Mohawk, and have students be able to react to things that are happening today, now, not airing a story that somebody worked on 3, 4, 5 days ago. You can work, the more time you have with a story, the better it can be. But how good of a story can you tell on a very tight time frame? Can you get the interviews? Can you get the people? Can you chase them? Can you put that story together in time to hit that noon magazine show?
I decided to join the radio team because I hate TV, so I decided I'd try it out, and it's lots of fun. Today I'm doing entertainment for the show. I'm currently grabbing some clips to put into my show. We like to put clips in with our script so that we can make it sound a little more exciting. Yeah, I'm one of the on-air members today. There's only 3 of us who go on air usually, which is the host, myself doing entertainment, and whoever's doing sports, which is Matt today.
The idea is to find as many sources as I possibly can, take a couple actualities from the news wires here on the computer that the school pays for. So actualities are like sound clips. And then basically just go on for 2 minutes at 12 o'clock and do the sports update for Ignite News.
All right, let's go do that now then. I get here I'm supposed to get here at 8. I usually wake up around 7, have most of it written by 8-ish. Come in, check the wires for anything new that's not on the newspapers online. Shop it all up and go live to air at 9 a.m.
Well, my role pretty much for today is I'm actually going to be hosting the show. So at the moment, I'm writing some stories for that. However, I wouldn't normally be writing this many stories simply because people decided not to submit actual reports today.
I don't have a story today, and the story that I was working on was a story on bed bugs that I've been working on for the past week, but it's been difficult to complete that story because contacts haven't been getting back to me, so they've been making my job very difficult because I've had a lot of hope in doing this story, and because they failed to call me back, I've basically been screwed over and I have nothing for our today's show. So it doesn't look good on my part.
It's a little bit of an issue. It's really, really frustrating. Just because, you know, I put in the effort and I make sure that I submit reports when I'm supposed to, and when other people don't necessarily do that, it can be very frustrating.
Well, I think since I said I've been working on this for the past week, I think I need to realize that the story obviously isn't going to work, so I should, the night or 2 nights before, probably think of a different story idea. That way I can actually have something, that way I won't ever have to be put in this situation again, and yeah, because it's not a good feeling, so.
But I also understand that, you know, sometimes people won't pull their own weight and you got to pull it for them, so. Good afternoon and welcome to Ignite News Today, the radio news magazine produced by students for students.
Thanks, Ashley. Here's a look at some local events you can check out this weekend. The Trailer Park Boys want you to celebrate Christmas with them in their not-so-classy Dear Santa Go F Yourself tour.
All right, thanks, Ashley. I'm Matthew Marconi. Let's start in the NHL. The Anaheim Ducks have fired head coach Randy Carlyle and hired the former big dog in Washington.
As the Christmas party invitations start flying in and the obligation to go overtakes your decision-making, drinking and driving plays a big factor.
Join us again next time as Ignite News host Michelle Ignatavicius gives us more on the latest news, entertainment, and sports. Make sure to log online to ignitenews.ca to catch the latest Ignite News Today podcast. I'm Ashley Dirk. Thanks for listening. Considering how kind of, not necessarily last minute, but I think we weren't too prepared today just because we didn't have as many reports as we would have liked, I think it went decently well. I think everyone on air did a really, really great job. We had some really solid reads, so overall it was pretty polished. It sounded good.
I think it went pretty well. Every day is a different day. Some days you get lucky and are able to get stories quickly. Some days reporters have generated some good material. We pulled the show together today. It timed out. We had some issues that were addressed: impaired driving, college tuition fees, the use of the MSA food banks. Overall, I think it was a good show. The host did a good job pulling it together. It was technically sound, and I'm happy with today's show. That's the way we roll, Lucas. That's the way we roll.
was a great documentary put together by Lucas, Jordan, and Michelle. It really showed what happens behind the scenes here at Mohawk College and how every radio show gets put together. I would like to take a step over now and focus more on Christmas. And with the holiday season approaching, video games are going to be at the top of many little boys' lists. But what is too violent these days, and how far is the video game industry come? Now let's take it over to Andy Hall, who has this documentary.
Video games, the industry that has been consistently successful for over 2 decades. Everyone has their own reasons for playing. Regardless of the violence, people continue to play. Question is why?
With the recent Call of Duty bringing in nearly $800 million in its first 5 days of sales, what is it about these violent video games that makes them so popular?
I think they're seductive, just like any other media content that's over the top. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, I mean, I guess you go back to, what's the root of all the, what was the first violent video game? I mean, did you consider something like I don't know, Donkey Kong or Mario Party, where Bowser would always get involved and shatter your hopes and dreams of getting all those coins back in the day. Doom. Manhunter, all those games. I think it's the realism, or the illusion of realism, that makes them seductive.
So the question is, what makes them seductive?
Violent video games per se over any other video game? Probably because just for the sheer fact of it's something that I can't do on a normal basis, right? It's like driving, obviously, yeah, racing games are a little to the extreme, but I can get a go-kart and go drive around. I can't really just shoot extreme aliens and blow stuff up on a daily basis. It's not just, a perk that I have. So it's more of a extreme reality that I can endure. Oh. The games are getting better. It's not just the graphics. Yeah, there's a gore factor and everything, but it's not just that. The games are getting better in gameplay, strategy, realism, the overall technology they're throwing into it. Now you can jump around and you don't need a controller, or you can use a controller as a weapon, or like an artificial weapon, of course, but you can just do a lot more with the video games. Like, it's so much more than back in the day when it was just Pong and a paddle. Now you're actually commanding a unit, or you're actually driving really around a bunch of areas, or you're actually just playing online with hundreds of people.
With the graphics and level of violence getting increasingly higher with each new game, should parents have more control over what their children are playing?
To an extent. You don't want your 5-year-old running and gunning and shooting kids. Like, you don't want your youngest kids to be exposed to war and think that when people die they respawn. You obviously want to have the fact that they need to appreciate and know what war is and what's the outcome and what happens before they get into a game where it's a war-based.
So, on balance, sometimes I worry about the level of violence and whatnot in some of the first-person games that he watches, but on the whole, we can talk about it, and here we can also introduce the variable talking with your parent or your guardian about, this isn't real violence.
So yeah, it all depends. I don't say you should slap an age on it, because some kids mature faster than others. Some kids understand faster than others. So I think when the parent believes that their child is ready, then they can get the game. But at the same time, you don't want some kid who's 30 and their parents don't think they're still not ready and you can't play a game, right? So there's you gotta give a little bit, right? So
there's no reset button. There are no cheats and codes that you can type in to have a zillion lives in a video game. Yeah, parents certainly do play a role. Media is certainly also responsible, but first and foremost, it's a parental issue thing too.
Is there something behind the graphics of these new video games that makes them so realistic, or in a sense increases the level of violence?
With all the changes in technology, it is more realistic than it ever was. That being said, I hear people quite often say it's too realistic, it looks too perfect, it looks too CGI. But you know, we live in that extreme culture where we're looking to see how far we can push ourselves, how far we can push our sports with extreme sports, and I think that translates itself to violence in the media, whether it be UFC or the latest Saw movie. So I think it's been said before by people probably smarter than me from past generations, but every generation seems to think that this is the worst it's ever been.
Mohawk College recently hosted a video game tournament that played feature to two of the most violent but most popular video games.
It's fantasy, it's not reality, you don't have the consequences of, you know, actually doing any of the types of things you're engaging in. And ultimately, human beings, we do have a primal nature to ourselves that I guess violence in video games stimulates. And it's better that than actually shooting somebody.
Since I'm Call of Duty, I gotta play Call of Duty. Even if I want to play Battlefield, what's the point? If I can't play with my buddies, then I can't compare myself and be like, oh man, yeah, well I got this last night, and what do you have? And you always want to play with your friends, so it's what your friends have. That's why I play Call of Duty.
Violent video games must have a certain amount of impact on avid gamers, right?
The research that's been done on the effects of violence on individuals is really, if it's conclusive, we can say that somehow, some way, over time, there is an impact. There is some sort of effect of viewing violence on the individual. Media has an effect on people, there's no doubt about it. Advertisers wouldn't buy advertising if media didn't have an impact on us. The question as to how avid video gamers might be affected by this level of violence is a tough question to answer, because we really have to look at the individual, him or herself. You've got the avid gamer. If you're sort of the avid gamer that all you do is play Call of Duty, all you do is watch Saw movies, you live in a violent, maybe you know, your parents were abusive and that sort of thing. You know, given that situation, you're more likely to be affected by the level of violence. That being said, some of the studies say that it works as a catharsis, that, you know, doing these first-person shooter games actually, from a stress standpoint, releases a lot of the stress, and you're less likely to become violent. So it in large depends on how much time is spent by this avid gamer, what else he or she does he or she interact with other people, is there a real world for this individual? So it's a tough question to answer. But generally speaking, the more exposed you are to violent content, whether it's gaming or videos or music or whatever, the research does show that you're more likely to become a violent person.
Some experts are saying that modern media is playing a large role in desensitizing the general public from not only violent video games, but violence in general.
Really, people talked about being desensitized to media violence back in the 50s and 60s. You know, an unfortunate case study, but it's a classic case study. Back in the 1960s, a woman by the name of Kitty Genovese was attacked not once but twice in the courtyard of her apartment building. People were out on their balconies watching this. The attacker left. She was laying on the ground screaming for help. She had been stabbed several times. Nobody called. The guy came back and murdered her when he came back. Nobody thought to call the authorities. And some say that that's a classic case of desensitization, the effects of media violence on the individual. Some also argued that it was a case of everybody else thought somebody else would call the cops. Like if there was just one guy watching Kitty getting attacked, the chances of somebody calling the cops for help would have gone up. But you know, the old adage of being desensitized, there's really no right answer. There's really no definitive answer there. I think that through time or over time, as the level of violence increases and becomes more realistic, then yeah, we certainly do. You certainly do run that risk. And maybe that answers your first question. why are these games, over-the-top games, so popular? Maybe it's because we've become so desensitized to just regular cops and robbers shoot 'em up that we need something even beyond Grand Theft Auto, even beyond Call of Duty.
I'd like to thank Andy Hall for that wonderful documentary on video game violence and the role that violence is now playing in video games. Sticking with the same theme of the holidays, I'd like to move over to New Year's. And do you always find that your plans are flaking towards the end of the night? Here's a wonderful documentary done by Sonia, James, and Ashley, shining a new light on an older building in Hamilton. And if you do not have any plans for New Year's yet, I'd keep an eye out, as you might want to check this establishment out.
It's a neighborhood bar that is a chameleon. We're trying to be Hamilton's Max's Kansas City or Hamilton's CBGB. This building was built in 1893 and it's been nothing but a bar. We came in with the intention of opening up a live music venue. Our main and biggest magnet that brought us to this area was the fact that there was a lot of really cool things happening artistically, and our friends were involved in a lot of the art exhibitions, installations, and things that were happening here. So it felt very comfortable and very fitting for us to put a live music venue on the street. We bought this building in April 2009. My business partner, Glenn Fallman, had this crazy idea of having another live music venue in the city of Hamilton.
I grew up at the Corktown over by St. Joe's. Corktown Tavern, and I used to go there all the time. To me, that was the room to see the bands. And about 5 years ago, another guy bought it and renovated, and he was afraid of leather jackets and skulls. After I stewed for about 2 or 3 years, I was tired of drinking at home, and felt that there was a hole in the local scene, and so found this place and decided we'd try and fill it.
A lot of the money that we had, and it wasn't much, but it all went behind the walls. It went into putting electricity in our walls, new plumbing, and just upgrading it to specs for you know, everything that we're trying to do. It didn't have that sort of new stigma to it, or the new car smell, you know. We still wanted it to smell like there was a few pops that were kind of rubbed into the rug, so to speak, you know. But it happened like a happy accident. We really came on board with a little bit of money, especially in terms of decor, and because of that, it really helped in creating this vibe of making it seem like we've been here forever, as crazy as that sounds. The biggest hurdle that we had in you know, trying to find any sort of direction with this bar was the name. We really wanted to be sort of a trademark that represented all of us collectively, but all of us individually as well. So one afternoon, after about maybe 100 names going back and forth, Glenn just brainstormed, you know, kind of almost an instinct, and said, this ain't Hollywood. And we just kind of locked eyes and thought that it was perfect. It was a record that really defined a lot of what this bar's all about in terms of attitude. We love rock and roll. We love Hamilton. The name comes from one of the most infamous rock and roll bands from Hamilton called the Forgotten Rebels.
Unpretentious Hamilton rock bar. Although we'll book anything, but...
Pepper Jack's Cafe closed a few months before we opened up. And the talent buyer and manager of that venue, his name is Ken Inoue. Ken asked us where our intentions were with the bar at the get-go as a venue, and we knew we wanted to do rock and roll. We just really weren't too sure how much we wanted to do and what else we wanted to do. Ken introduced the hip-hop community to us single-handedly. He was very instrumental. I mean, we knew people that participated in hip-hop, like Lee Reed, but you know, we definitely needed someone to kind of bridge the gap. Lee Reed is ferocious. Lee Reed has bigger balls than two oceans put together. He's like the most intelligently outspoken person in this city.
Hip hop in this city is it doesn't have a long history, and it doesn't have a deeply entrenched way of doing things. And a big part of that is the space that's provided for hip hop in Hamilton hasn't always been great. And so the fact that they let us book hip hop shows here, there's been quite a few in the last couple of years.
Yeah, y'all know what I'm about. Mouth music, make it drop it, dope, there's no doubt, huh? Yeah, I'm doing it. Two steps, no one play up on a blindness. So over the flesh, cause you know she the finest. Double it up and throw it back, whatever the comments do around the stars and planets of
You get to interact with people across sort of genres or subcultures because this place invites, things like hip hop and punk into the same space. Hip hop heads get to meet punks, punk heads, and that's a good thing. It introduces people to new ways of making music, new ways of thinking about how to go about their music. There's different business models for all types of music, and I think as people have exposure to the way other types of music are run, it's a good thing for everybody.
Live How You Live shows are awesome because we're really blessed to have a great following of people who, Lou always brings up, they all know the words, they all sing along, and that's a great feeling on its own. But when you had that on top of having all these other gentlemen, and performers around that you can learn from and be around, it was just pretty unstoppable combination.
I always do think that every time I see Live How You Live play here, I always think this might be the last time before they're on their way.
I just think that it's got a bit of a character that keeps growing there.
It's not just like a shell and four walls with a sound system and a stage. It's like it's an entity and an environment that there's something spiritual or something happening there that you can't explain. That when you get there, it just something takes over. When you get on stage and when you're playing, you never know where the show's going to take you, and whatever set list or plans you have, you throw it out the window and you just rock the shit out of that crowd that's there. And there's always a story every time you go there. It's like, oh, the shotgun up here, I'm sure people have told that story or whatever when they took it down, and finding, it used to be like a bootlegging place.
All you had to do was go to the doctor and kind of wink or slip him a buck or something, and he'd write you out a prescription for alcohol. And so 90% of the bottles that we found was a Hamilton business, and they all say Hawks, Invalids, Port Wine, Reconstructive Tonic for the debilitated, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's booze masquerading as medicine. It looks old, but I've been told it's from like late 70s, early 80s. And it had, I don't know much about guns, but somebody fired it and something happened on the inside, so there's like an inclusion or something in the barrel, so if you're gonna fire it again, you'd blow yourself up. But to me, if it was 100 years old and stuck in a corner somewhere, that would be one thing, but the fact that it's like, say, from 1980 and it's stuck in the corner, to me, that's scarier. Like, it wasn't just forgotten. I think it was put there and all sorts of shit put on top of it for a reason, right? So
we've got a great clientele. Our daytime clientele are primarily older gentlemen that like to come in for an afternoon drink, watch TV, gab about politics, gab about sports, gab about the latest trade, gab about the occupying stuff that's happening in Toronto. So it's more of like, a meeting of minds and talking about current events. Once about 7 o'clock kicks in, it just seems like the room turns over and it becomes more artistically minded, more musically driven, and all the energy. And when people come here, they talk music.
You talk to these people and it's like you're looking in the mirror and these people are you. It's really hard when you meet so many bands playing different shows, different club owners, and when you meet them, it's like, okay, this guy doesn't care what I'm talking about, or it's like, but these people, every single person was genuine, and it's like, this is me, they are us, like, they just get it, and Lou gets it, and everybody that Lou brings to the club gets it, and if you don't get it, you don't go there. Yeah.
well put together documentaries showcasing this St. Hollywood. Well, that concludes our show. I would like to thank you for joining me over the past half hour, where I've shown you 3 excellent documentaries on video game violence, what goes on here behind the scenes at the Mohawk radio station, and this St. Hollywood, a pub in downtown Hamilton. Over the past few weeks, journalism students here at Mohawk have been putting their heart and soul into these documentaries, and I would like to thank you for sharing them. Have a happy holidays. Here from Mohawk College, I'm Adam Pacheco.